About 3 years ago, I painted this epic 1980s pop culture skateboard for a YouTube video on my channel. It is probably the first video you'll see if you go into my channel, so it was very, very early. I did not know what I was doing. I know, I still don't, but it's not... I loved this piece at the time, but I can acknowledge now that I could do a far better job trying to recreate this now. So that is what we're doing today. I'm going to take a fresh skateboard and my 1980s knowledge, love, everything, and I'm going to do a redo, and you can be the judge whether or not I succeed or if I should just go with the original. So we're kicking this off today with Ariel, the Little Mermaid. The movie is from 1989, so she only just slides into the 1980s, but she is still a 1980s Disney princess. And if you've watched anything on my channel, you've probably seen that I've done a Snow White-ish video, if you could call it that. I have done a few Disney coloring books, and I've also done Ariel as well. Actually, I technically did her twice in paintings. One was with acrylic paints and another was with a thrift store redo where she was kind of in there, but that one didn't turn out too well, so let's not talk about that one. Anyway, she is iconic. Every Disney princess is iconic, and the Disney Renaissance, which started off with The Little Mermaid, is what has made Disney such a powerhouse movie producer ever since then. They were kind of failing dramatically in the 1970s and the 1980s. They could just not get a hit. And then The Little Mermaid came out and everything changed, and it's been a completely different story ever since then. She really changed the trajectory of history of Disney. Now let's get to my second character, and you could be thinking, this is Kermit the Frog. Well, yes it is. And you may be thinking, well, isn't the Muppet Show from the 1970s? That is true. He was an adult in the 1970s, but he was a baby in the 1980s in the Muppet Babies. And you can tell this is baby Kermit because number one, his head is a little rounder. And number two, most importantly, he was not yet a nudist. He had his little navy outfit on, but he hasn't got to that period in his life where he just said, you know what? Shorts and t-shirt just don't do it for me. I would rather go all natural like he does as an adult. So this is definitely baby Kermit from the Muppet Babies. Onto character number 3. This is obviously Mario, and I had to do a little bit of research on Mario because in 1984, when the original Mario video game came out, he was wearing green and red costume, or sometimes white and red if you got the flower. In 1988, he did change to the blue and red, and that is the version I'm going with today for this one. I will do a little Easter egg, or I'll pay homage to the original 1984 Mario soon. I just wanted to make sure though, when I did my major Mario for this piece, that it looked like the Mario that you guys would actually know. If I put him in the green and the red, you might go, that's not Mario. So it was a little bit of a compromise going with the color stylings of the older Mario. Well, the second oldest Mario. The 1988 Mario, that's what we'll call him instead, because it's still something that we see today and we understand those colors. I just want to talk about, at this point in the actual project, I had 3 characters in. I was starting my 4th character, and this was never my original concept. When I had finally decided to do a 1980s skateboard again, I just saw something in my head. It was a complete illustration. It was a complete scene of different characters interacting with each other, because my original skateboard was just this person placed here and someone else placed there. There was really nothing bringing them together. So I wanted something that would kind of combine them. I wanted a story. So I actually had this concept in my head, but I hadn't really fully fleshed it out, and I was kind of stuck at probably 50 to 60% of an idea and a concept. and I just did not back myself. I was like, nope, that is not going to work. You can't pull this off. This is a bit stupid. Maybe you should do something a bit more normal, which is why I went with these giant heads, because it just fills up the entire space. There's no negative space with it. But I decided I loved my first concept, so I still wanted to share that with you. So I end up doing the other side of the skateboard as well after this, which I was aware that that was going to increase my work by 50%, no, 100%. And that was a bit scary because these things take a long time just to do one side, and suddenly I was deciding that I was going to do two sides, and yeah. But I have so much fun painting these projects. Like, they are the best. I love doing custom projects. They're the thing I love doing the most. They're just less boring. Like, I love doing canvas painting as well. I do a lot of learning. I do some sketchbook things where I try to learn anatomy, and I do the sketches with the graphite, and I do various oil paintings. I do a lot of side projects that you don't even see on this channel. But I think for this channel, I love doing things that are a little bit more fun. And for me, that's customization. You might notice that I didn't show all of ET. Well, after about 10 hours of filming, I got up on a Sunday morning, ready to film, got my cameras in gear, all sorted out, got my microphone on, everything, made sure my paints were good. I forgot to hit record. Yeah. And ET was one of the best parts of this whole skateboard. Up until this point, he's my favorite of all the characters I had done. And I think I pulled him off quite well because I was scared of ET. He's quite complex. He's got a lot of texture, and I did not think I could actually pull any of that off, but I just decided to try. I don't do things that are easy. I mean, Kermit's easy. He's green. He's got simple shapes, but I don't tend to just do the easy thing. I always want to push myself. I always want to learn, and I just try to go with things that are a little bit difficult. And yeah, so some of these ones, E.T., Chucky, Beetlejuice, what I'm doing right here, they're definitely out of my comfort zone, especially as a non-acrylic artist. I love pencils. I love oil painting. Both of those things I find incredibly easy to blend on the actual page or the canvas. Acrylics, not so much. I know some people will love them and they'll say that they're the easiest medium to work with. They have a lot of skills and knowledge that I just haven't acquired yet, so I struggle a lot with them. And therefore creating some of these more realistic-ish, I won't call them realism, realistic-ish characters were definitely a challenge for me, but I don't want to shy away from doing things that are a little bit hard. So I put these characters in there. And I also wanted to make sure that this actual side of the board, it's not just cartoon characters. I want it to be varied. I want different art styles. I wanted to represent those characters. I want Beetlejuice to have a little bit of, to look like a human and not look like just like a cartoon. Ariel, she is a cartoon. She's allowed to look like a cartoon, but I want to have toning and shadows and values for other characters that are supposed to have those values. The very last character on the first side is Gizmo. He was the perfect thing to put in this space because he is just little and squashy and you just kind of want to hug him, let's face it. We all want a Gizmo. You do not lie. You want Gizmo. You may not want the BSC stuff that comes with Gizmo, but you do want Gizmo. He is really, really cute, and I struggled with his arms, but I love his mouth, his snout, the texture of it, the 3D looks, the shadows. I love that he actually kind of looks fluffy. So as much as I do struggle with the more realism side of acrylic paints, I think I pulled him off, and him, Gizmo, along with E.T., are my absolute favorites from this first half of the board. There were elements that I was just like, yeah, don't know about that, but I finally got there with him, and I'm really, really proud of how he looks. And there is no doubt, if you look at this skateboard, you know that's Gizmo. On to the second half. Now, this side is going to be very different to the first, which is why I said that it was a concept that was in my head, and it's more of a story. It's kind of an illustration, so generally most of the characters, most of the elements on this will kind of relate to each other. They relate to the overall story, and the theme of this is going to be Baby Smurf's adventure. Baby Smurf, which will come soon, he comes about halfway, is kind of doing something that's a little bit dangerous, and as a result, this other Smurf has to kind of come to the rescue. This other Smurf is currently in what I am calling Mario Land. There is going to be a lot of Mario elements to this section. And the original Smurf here, he's got a little bit of biceps there. He's having to hold on quite well because he's holding onto this cassette tape. And now anyone that's gone through the 1980s or used cassette tapes knows how the actual tape itself is so flimsy and can come out really, really easily. And Smurfs are very little, so they probably could use a cassette tape as a rope, and he's trying to climb up to try to get to Baby Smurf, who again, like I said, will be there shortly. Now, I talked about Mario on the first side because Mario is the one element that is actually on both sides, and he is wearing his 1984 costume with the green and the red. I added Slimer. Now, he was actually on my first skateboard, as well as the Smurfs were there too, and E.T. was, and Beetlejuice was. But this Slimer is kind of based on a graphic from the actual movie, but I have cartoon styled him, which is kind of my prerogative to do that. He's a little bit of a menace. He's dripping slime, he's dripping cheese from the pizza, and he's holding this cassette tape. The cassette tape that is going to be where Baby Smurf will soon be. I do have to tell you though, when I originally saw the 1984 Ghostbusters, I was 6 years old, and I got home from the cinema and I was terrified. I actually thought, well, I didn't necessarily think, I just thought there might be a chance the Slimer was going to be in my closet. So I got home just a little bit freaked out, and I had to look in my closet doors to see inside the closet, and there was no Slimer. So after that I was fine, but yeah, he was a little bit intense for 6-year-old me, and I didn't enjoy that part of it. I am just kind of finishing up Q-Bert here. He is the one character that I decided to do way different because he's just really in the background. He is like the size of my little pinky finger tip. He's tiny, but I don't want to do everything 100% the same, so I thought let's just have him in the background and make his blocks the thing that stands out, because if he's giant then his blocks would even be bigger. So I did him a little bit differently. On to the star of this side, which is Baby Smurf. Baby Smurf is kind of, he sees a balloon and he's trying to reach the balloon, and he's kind of crawling towards it, but he's on this cassette tape that is being stolen by Slimer, and he's very close to the edge of the cassette tape. So what happens if he falls into that Mario flower and he dies. Yes, Baby Smurf is in danger of death. That is what this whole side of the skateboard is about. And we have a Smurf, you know, trying to chase him and trying to save him, because obviously a baby doesn't realize what danger he's put himself into, trying to chase this balloon. And the balloon itself is in what I'm going to call Care Bear world. So the whole top half of the painting is the Care Bear land. And those Care Bears are just going to be chilling up there. They're not going to be aware what's happening underneath the rainbow. They're not going to be aware that this helium balloon that they've actually released is going to cause some danger, because they're just high up. They're just in their own little world, and it's just something they just can't see. So this first Care Bear, and I'm just going to apologize because I do not know Care Bear names. I did see a Care Bears movie once, It was a very long time ago, and I just chose some random Care Bears that are cute for this because they are very 1980s and I really wanted that element in here. So this first Care Bear, he is sitting on a swing that has gold ropes and is on the sun. So he's just swinging along, living a very, very good little life. And I absolutely love the Care Bear's toe beans. I mean, who doesn't love toe beans? I have 2 cats and toe beans are the best. But the Care Bear ones have got a little heart shape and then the little toes are just adorable. So I love that added touch, which is not my touch, it's their touch. And this is the second of the 2 Care Bears. He is a little bit more, he's not as happy. He's definitely not happy, but I prefer that they've got different emotions. So this one's just sitting on the rainbow, holding onto some of the stars. I had a little bit of space left in this Mario section, so I just added this little flying turtle. And I'm so glad I did because he is so adorable. I absolutely love him. He's only little, but I think he came out really well. And I even added a little floating eyebrow. I always see people add floating eyebrows to cartoon characters, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to totally do that. So I stole that idea and I love it. The biggest element of this page, and it's kind of where I was a bit unsure about my whole concept, how to really relate to it or how it would relate to each other, was I'm adding the Terminator, and he's quite big, so this part of the whole side is completely different to everything that's gone on above it. So the Terminator is there to help save Baby Smurf. He's got a phone. The original photo of the Terminator from the actual cover art, he's holding a gun. But I wanted the 1980s brick phone. I wanted to show some 1980s technology. I've got the cassette tape, and the brick phone is the second element I've got here. Those two are very, very famous for the 1980s. There's probably not a lot of technology other than like a Nintendo console that is really recognizable for the 1980s, and I've covered off the computer games in other ways. So he's holding the brick phone, trying to call help or trying to get some backup or something. I did struggle a bit with him. I kind of got some parts of his mouth and his chin wrong. When I sit there doing this actual painting, my desk is not deep enough for the skateboard. The skateboard is, I think, 80 centimeters length, and my desk is 60 in depth. So I have to always have it diagonally, which means I'm always on a weird angle. And being on a weird angle, it distorts how I see a lot of these drawings. And I can kind of make mistakes based on that. And I definitely made a mistake with the lower half of his body. Arnold Schwarzenegger, or the lower half of his face, Arnold Schwarzenegger has these really deep lips. They have the sides of the top lip is just like this M, but they're really, really deep. And I didn't know this about him until I started painting him and really studying his face. He also has a very square jaw, and I do fix those things, but I fix them afterwards. I also had painted over the feet of the 2 characters above, and I was kind of devastated when I lost some of my turtles, so I painted them back in because, yeah, I really like that part, as I said before. My final element of this whole skateboard, after like 24 hours at this point, is Roger Rabbit. He was also in my original skateboard, but this concept is a original version of him. I've taken a few different images of him and I've mashed them into one, where he is seeing everything that's happening above him with Baby Smurf, with the Smurf hanging from the thing. He sees Slimer, he just sees all of that, and he's like in shock. His eyes are popping out of his face, his tail is popping out of his butt, his bow tie is coming off because he's in shock. I find it really bizarre though, because even though I did use some references for his body is like front on, because we see his feet and we see his legs, but you still see his tail, but that's where the reference is, and I think it's just the cartoon style. So I've still included that, even though it looks a bit weird to me that his anatomy would be twisted like that, but it's cartoon. And I'm really proud of how he came out because my original Roger Rabbit from the first skateboard was probably one of the sketchiest elements on it, probably along with Beetlejuice, so he's come out really, really well and I think he's adorable. I'm just going to finish up the last bit with his car. I do some of this off camera because again it's that whole angle thing. It was hard to do it trying to in the constraints of where my camera is and where the skateboard is on my desk, so I do finish it up and you will get to see the finished car in the final reveals in just a moment. Tell me what you think. Do you like this skateboard? I would love to know your thoughts on everything I've done today. Did I do better than the last one? So here's the finished skateboard, both sides. There are a few different changes. There are a few changes from what was shown on the video. Michelangelo was not finished originally. It was too hard to kind of get his angle right and to finish his mouth off on the camera. Just because my desk only has a certain depth and this skateboard is much larger than it, I always had to sit at a really weird angle just to paint it, which caused some issues with perspective for a few of the characters like Chucky. I had to fix things on him as I was going because he looked pretty nasty at the start, because when you're looking at something from this angle you don't get things right. And originally I put a bit of a magenta around E.T., but I didn't really like it, and when I did Gizmo I ended up putting black around him. So I went over the magenta with the black, and it still has a little bit of the pink in there, but it looks really nice. It gives it a little bit of a warmth to a black. My favourite two characters on this first side is E.T. I do wish I got the full filming process for him because I thought he was going to be really, really difficult, and he ended up turning out really well. I loved that I managed to get the glow of his finger pretty well, and his eyes look so good. I'm really, really proud of him. And the other one I love on this first side is Gizmo. He is so cute. I did struggle with him a little bit, mostly his arms. I just didn't know what to do with them. I could see the reference picture, but it was kind of cut off at the steering wheel, so I couldn't really quite make out what his hands were doing. I kind of had a little bit of struggle, but I eventually got there with them, and I'm so happy. He just looks adorable, and he looks pretty authentic to the character. So that's all of side one. Biggest challenges were the non-cartoons, because I am definitely not a strong, realistic acrylic paint artist. I am better at oil paintings. Oil painting. So that's my preferred medium, where I can do a lot of blending. And when I get to acrylics and I'm trying to blend colors to get different tones of faces, I struggle a lot. And I have to say, I used a single wet palette for a whole month to paint this. It took me around 26 hours. I had about 24 hours filmed, but I did not film all of E.T. the wet palette pretty much died on the very last skin tone, which was him. So I didn't use the wet palette as much on the second side because I was kind of a little bit over it. I didn't have a lot of space and I did a lot more markers. First side is basically all Liquitex paints. I was kind of wanting to do the whole thing Liquitex, and I did use the soft body acrylics for all of this. And by the time I got to the side two, and I was probably about 15 hours into the project already, and I just wanted to kind of hurry things up, so I did use a lot more of my markers. On this side, there's a few things that were not finished originally. The car, I couldn't get the toning right. Again, he's a bit like Michelangelo at the bottom, where it was hard to get the angles right, but I managed to find a paint marker that was kind of like a little bit of yellow ochre, which allowed me to add some shading to him. His eyes are not right, by the way. I have to fix those. One's high, one's low. But I think he actually looks quite awesome in the end, and I love Roger. Terminator, I wish his hands were a bit more separated. If you look at my hands as I hold this, like he's got the glove. It should be a bit more like this, not squashed up. And I think it's okay that the fingers go into the thing, because you can hold something like this, but I do wish they were curved a bit more. I love this little turtle. He was just a part of my Mario land. This is all Mario land. And yeah, I'm really proud of how this turned out. Let's just compare. Let's just look at the original. And this one was done over Easter. No, this one was done in June 2022, which was only a few months into my YouTube channel. It's the oldest video currently on my channel, and it was my first time ever using paint markers. I bought the paint markers specifically to do this, and I was a bit sketchy with some of it. Like, some of it was free drawn, some of it I traced, some of it there was a lot of heavily relying on Google for everything, for all the images, because I was still quite learning. But I think now the new one, even though I'm still using reference pictures, these are more of my own composition, because even Roger is a mixture of a couple of different images of Roger Rabbit put together. I had to literally Google Smurf butts to figure out what they look like from behind, just so I could have him. And I was trying to figure out the anatomy, and if you're holding something, like technically his body could be coming this way, but he could be a little bit strong, like he's a little bit of bicep here. This one, originally he had a little rattle in his hand in the original reference picture, but I wanted him to be trying to follow the balloon. And he's also more original, so in my original one of him, it was very much a version of the cartoon version of Slimer. But this is more of the 1984 Slimer with some edits. It is cartoon style, but I've done that myself. I've added just different things. I wanted the pizza. I considered having Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles at the bottom eating pizza, but I think to do all four of them, I would have struggled a lot and I wouldn't have pulled it off. And he would have been stealing their pizza. But these two, considering they were literally something I woke up to that day, and I thought I should add Roger Rabbit, I'm really happy with him. So these two are my favourite thing on this page. I keep saying page. It is not a page, it is a skateboard. So yeah, my favourite are Roger, E.T. and Gizmo. And this comparison, my original Roger Rabbit was really shady and dodgy. I've got to say, E.T. is definitely a better version of E.T., but that was an iconic. This one was the iconic E.T., so I don't mind that. And Beetlejuice, yeah, he was a bit simple before. It is more of an original piece for me, and I really love it. He's a bit weird on there. He matches more the other style, but he was in my original concept of holding the 80s phone, because I wanted to have things that were items that were 1980s. So he's got the 80s phone, I've got the cassette tape with the 80s mix, and it's just showing technology, because 1980s is not just movies and music and video games, it's obviously the whole world of things. So I wanted to be able to show that, so he was always in there and he was always going to be under this section. What do you think? Do you think I Do you think I did better than my original skateboard? Do you think I would do better again? What would you think I should do for another skateboard art piece? If you like this content, don't forget to hit the like button and to subscribe to my channel for more content like this. And I will see you next time. Bye. Was completely... Yes, Trixie. My Trixie. Hey, baby. She doesn't like being held by me. She just likes being held by her daddy.